Tom Carolan, welcome to the Preconstruction Podcast.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Appreciate you giving up your time for this wonderful planning and scheduling series that we're doing. For anybody who doesn't know the wonderful Tom, he's director of scheduling at Barton Mallow up in Baltimore City in Maryland. So I do know that you were at the conference recently in Dallas, planning and scheduling,
Yep.
put on by Hanson Wade. How was it?
It was great. Yeah, it was really good time. Lots of good presentations. Got to chair the innovation track for a day, so that was fun. Lots of good discussion. Great presentation. So that's the first time doing anything like that. So that was fun.
Good man, good man. Yeah, we're big fans of Hanson Wade. We obviously attend the Advancing Pre-Construction one every year. So we're going to get into more on what you talked about down in Dallas. But before we do all that, construction management degree from Wentworth. Who
Yeah.
who guided you into that, or who pushed you into that?
Um, Geez. Kind of just lucked into Wentworth, to be honest. I kind of started my career in residential stuff, with I didn't have a degree or anything like that. Just kind of fell into that with that was my old man's business. He was a home builder, so I was kind of just following in that. Um, Realized I wasn't going to go too far in that without kind of some more education. Didn't have a lot of money at the time. My sister happened to be living in Boston, which is where Wentworth is. Did a little research. It's a great program, a lot of good internships that you have to do while you're there. So she needed some help with childcare at the time. I needed a place to stay, to go to school.
Right.
Just kind of worked out that way. Turns out Wentworth is a fantastic construction management program. So I did kind of just get lucky that way. But yeah, it's a school that requires you to do like three internships. So I ended up doing my internships with Whiting Turner, which was a great experience. So kind of really got to see, the commercial side and the difference from residential construction to commercial construction kind of, obviously it's a big jump there. So um knew I was gonna kind of get into real, I guess, bigger construction at that point. So
Yeah, we hear a lot of good things about Wentworth. Just give us an idea. One thing I always like asking all the programs throughout the US and the universities and colleges, what was covered in the construction management degree? And more to the point is how much pre-construction estimating, planning, and scheduling, how many modules were involved in those?
um I remember we had at least definitely had at least a 10 like a 101, a 201. I don't remember what the exact numbers were, but for estimating and scheduling, we had at least two classes and they definitely had like labs involved. And then I remember for our I guess like our capstone type projects, we had to put together a schedule and do like estimates for the projects that we were kind of presenting on. So, yeah, I mean, we were in like WinEst, I remember, and we were
Brilliant.
using P6. We had licenses for P6. So, I mean, when we got
Oh yeah.
out into the real world, these were not like new things. Like it was I knew how to use P6 when I got into the real world for sure already. So
Good. I love that. I love hearing that. And I'm hearing even at Advancing Pre-Construction in Denver recently, some of the pre-con tech companies have been asked to get involved with some of the universities and use their technology in the university. So that's
yeah,
exactly what we want to hear. So
yeah.
P6, was that, would you have been doing that on the residential side, or was that the first time coming across P6?
No, nothing like that on the residential side. That was definitely the first time. And again, my our family company was a small little shop, so I don't know what Lennar or some of these bigger firms they may be into something, but I suspect not. I think it's more it's just a different type of business. The residential is not, they don't do the same type of work.
Brilliant. And was the construction manager degree, was that the first time of seeing schedule and seeing planning, or when was the time you turned around and went, "Ooh, this is nice. I like this. I reckon my skill set sits right here in construction."
Um So that was, I guess I saw it at school, right? And then I also saw it kind of out at in the internships, right? So I was out doing the internships with Whiting Turner. Um, you're out there doing like PE work, basically. You're kind of filling in as a PE while you're out there. It's long hours. You're doing submittals. You're doing RFIs. You're kind of seeing the life of like the PEs and the assistant PMs, right? And or the assistant supers. They're working Saturdays. They're working long hours. And then I also saw this consultant came along, the scheduling consultant came along, and he kind of showed up like every 2 weeks. He kind of plopped his projector down and he just kind of was out there, laughing, joking around. He looked like he didn't have a lot of stress at all. Like he was relaxing. He's just doing the schedule updates, like,
Yeah.
enjoying himself. And so I kind of just like that, like planted a little seed in my head, like, okay, like this guy's involved in the project. He's there. He's definitely involved in construction. He's part of the team. Um, but he's not out here like grinding away all the time. Like he's not working, 60, 70 hour weeks. And so that was like the first kind of seed, like, like I wonder there are other options, right? There's other options besides being a PM and a super. Um, but it wasn't much later until I kind of um I got an opportunity with URS, which is the company that I finally first started to work as a planner and scheduler down in Texas, that I really, actually took that profession and started working as a scheduler. So that was a couple of years later, but um that was the first time I was ever crossed my mind that could be an actual profession outside of, I was just assumed I would be a PM, right? I just
Yeah,
assumed
yeah.
the track, that's what you just do. When you're in CM school, you just assume that's what you're gonna do. Like
Yeah.
super or PM, like those seem like the only options, but
I love those stories where everybody in pre-construction estimating, scheduling, and planning, they say, "How did you get into?" Oh, I just fell into it. It just somebody said to me one day, "Have you ever tried this?" And away you go. I mean, that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of construction right now. There's so many. You look at now, data engineers and BIM and VDC. There's just so many
yeah,
options.
absolutely. Yeah.
But you obviously like the schedule. So let's talk to you about going from a PE to AECOM or URS at the time,
Yeah.
on the scheduling side. How was that baptism of fire?
Yeah, so again, so a little bit of a theme here, like really lucky just the environment I got kind of hired into down there. There was an incredible training program. I got hired by a guy named Wayne Hawkins, and Jacques Tremblay were the project controls directors down there at the time. And basically, there was a class of us, maybe six or seven of us, that got hired at the same time. And we literally just got locked in a conference room for like 3 months and just went through like a boot camp. Like, this is project controls. Like, this is how URS does project controls. Like, you're not leaving the room. You're not going to touch a project. You're not going to see a project team or do anything until like you can like pass these tests, and like we trust that you can answer these questions and you know what you're talking about. Um, which again, like at the time, I didn't realize how incredible that was, to really get that opportunity, that long of a runway of training. As somebody that has to deal with salary budgets and training budgets and expense budgets now, um, that's hard to get. Like you don't have that available, right? I don't have that much time to just sit people on the sideline for 3 months. Like you got to
Yeah,
get them out there working, right? Like
yeah. You got to
so.
get an ROI on them. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It's just you just don't really have that opportunity typically. So that was really, really a great opportunity at the time. And so I really feel like and I think talk even just if I were to talk to those people at the time, a lot of them are in similar positions that I'm in now at other companies and even in different industries, like some in like software and other places. And I think just getting that opportunity to really just learn project controls at like the fundamental level and drill that stuff in, set us up for success. Like we really just learned every little detail that you would ever want to learn.
Yeah,
So
and do you think it was because of the industry? We obviously know the importance, and I worked in mining and oil and gas in Australia. The importance of scheduling and planning within
yeah.
those industries are so important because the money involved and the shutdowns and various
Yep.
aspects of it. Do
That's
you
it.
think
Yeah.
that was because of the industry? I mean, do you think in commercial industry you would have just been, as you say, put on a project, you make mistakes, you learn, and you move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's most of us went from, that training. A lot of us got put right onto either a ConocoPhillips program or Williams Energy program or an Exxon or Shell or something like that. We were doing a lot of big energy, a lot of engineering slash procurement programs where we design a lot of stuff and then ship everything out from there. Um, but a lot of it, or there was a lot of fertilizer plants and things we were building up in Iowa. There was all kinds of stuff that we were doing there. LNG stuff was happening. It was almost all cost plus,
Yeah.
right? Almost all of it is super, super fast, cost plus work, where whoever the client is, they're paying for every engineering hour, every procurement hour, they just staff of 300 people that are doing all this work, and every hour, these are expensive hours, very high dollar people, doing a lot of work, let alone all the craft labor out in the field. I mean, so this is hundreds of millions of dollars client is going to pay for no matter what. They want that forecast to be as dialed in, as accurate as possible. So that's what they're paying for. So they're willing to pay for a project controls team of, 7, 8, 10 people if they can get certainty on that forecast, right? They just want to know what that end price is going to be. Because again, they have 20 of these projects going on all over the world. That rolls up. I mean, these are all publicly traded companies. They need to be able to report that stuff with a certain level of accuracy. So I think it all stems from that type of need for certainty around the forecast, right? They need to know what has it cost so far and what is it going to cost at the end, right? And that's in the CM world. Traditionally, you're working more at a CM at risk, lump sum. Like the owner pretty much knows what it's going to cost, within a certain range, right? There's some allowances, there's some change orders maybe here or there, but like it's within a percentage here or there. Like we know what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
So a natural gas plant on a cost plus basis, like it could go from 150 million to 250 million, like pretty quickly. Like, and they're going to pay that. So they need to really know. And I think that's where that all comes from. So
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think, I mean, there's no doubt about it, in that industry, oil and gas and the resources, they live by the schedule and the
yeah.
planning. Do you see that when you came over to the commercial construction side of things? Do you see it still in its infancy to get to that stage?
I mean, it's not the same type of planning. I mean, I think a lot of the work we do now, again, it's so my work, I am the director for the Barton Mallow Builders side, which is the commercial CM side, right? So we're doing a lot of sports work, healthcare, higher ed, right? So this is like CM at risk, maybe some design build, but typically that is the world we're living in. Um, so a lot of the planning work that we're doing is working with architects through like a 9-month design period where we're just trying to work through different iterations of what we're going to actually build, right? Like there's a lot of what if scenarios. There's a lot of different, hey, if we change this curtain wall design, what's that going to do to procurement? Like how are all these things going to shake out? Um, how is it going to shake out the buyout process? How is that going to impact construction down the line? Like that's a different type of planning versus um, measuring performance on a natural gas plant because we built 100 natural gas plants before. We'll build 100 again. They don't really change that much, right? The design is the design to the design. It's pretty standard. I think the scheduling and the planning there is more measuring performance, measuring quantities, understanding performance, and then projecting that out, being able to accurately understand where you are and where you're going to end up and get that right. Like it's a quicker start, but it's more really understanding, 15-20% in, like, are you going to hit it? Like, where are you going to end up? Right. That's a different, that's a different type of, it's really two different skill sets almost.
Yeah. And then the time, obviously, however you go over that, there's going to be production delays and all of that.
Yeah.
That's where the money comes into it and
I,
the
I
fees.
think the other big difference too is a lot of that oil and gas energy type stuff is direct craft labor, right? You control the labor force a lot more. And again, like on in within Barton Mallow, on the other side of Barton Mallow, we do a lot of that work.
Yeah.
And that's like a whole separate part of our company that does that work specifically. In the manufacturing world, we do a lot of battery plant work. We do a lot of stuff like that. Um, on the side that I'm working on, it's almost all subcontracted. We do very little self-perform at all, which again, that's a whole nother layer of of planning and skill set to deal with another organization within that,
Yeah.
layer of planning. So
Plenty of headaches by the sounds of things, Tom. I love it. And that's actually probably another good place to start because let's take it back a little bit for the project engineers listening, the
yeah,
APMs, the assistant supers, that haven't really gone through the pre-construction team or the pre-construction route or the planning route. If you were to kind of simplify it and explain to them what planning and scheduling or what a project planner or project
yeah,
scheduler does, what would you say?
sure. Yeah, so a lot of what we do is it's really about like gathering information from lots of different sources, putting it all together and kind of like building the cohesive like plan, right? Like you're gonna get pieces like in our world, let's just say we're gonna build a hospital, right? Architect is designing the hospital. They have a bunch of deliverables they're gonna put together. Um, So you have to figure out the timing of that. They have a design schedule, so you need to get that. Then, part of our team is going to be purchasing and putting out bid packages out on the street. So you have to figure out the timing of that. So you have to get that together, put that in the schedule. That has to tie to the design schedule, right? You need to get a design to get that together, put together a bid schedule. You have to work with the operations team. You have to talk with superintendents. Hey, what's our plan for the construction once we actually get some subcontractors on board? So there's all these different kind of parts and pieces of the puzzle that you have to work with, talk with, plan, and you're really involved with all of it.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to interface with everyone. So a lot of it is having kind of the soft skills to be able to really deal with like everyone in different capacities and different ways. You have to just be able to gather that information, see kind of the bigger picture. Like your job is to see the project like from like 40,000 feet, right?
Yeah.
Because the architect is not going to see all this other stuff. The superintendent is not going to see what the architect is doing. Like your job is to see it from up here, piece all those things together, and then communicate that back out to everyone else,
You're
right? To make
basically
sure
a
that,
guiding light from the very start the whole way through. And then what
yeah,
about how early do you get on board? I mean, when we get pre-construction managers and estimators on, they want to get on board with a client as early as possible, do
yeah.
conceptual estimates. Where does the planner come on board?
So I mean, in our organization, like we're part of the initial like pursuit schedule, like when we're going after a project. And that wasn't always the case, to be honest. So we used to have, maybe like 5 years ago, we would always run into this problem where we would get frantic emails from PMs or project teams or whoever. It would, hey, either we have a pursuit going in 2 days and we need to schedule, like, oh my God, we need to schedule, and we'd have to throw something together real quick, or the other one is, oh, we won this project and we're starting, next week and we need a schedule, like, which is even worse. Like, I was like, well, wait a second, like what happened? So there's been a lot of work in our organization over the past couple of years to really kind of like organize our life cycle process. So we have a lot more systems in place. We have like a Monday.com, like whole life cycle thing. So like from like the go, no go process, there's a whole number, like series of notifications that go through. So the second like a pursuit starts and people say, all right, we're going to start working on this, like I get a notification and then I can now assign this out to one of my schedulers. And then we have somebody that's like on it. So
Yeah.
like one of our schedulers is involved the second we start working on any pursuit.
Yeah.
So from then on, there's a scheduler involved.
Brilliant.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then obviously working closely with the estimators and the pre-construction team,
Yep.
especially early on to get an understanding from a numbers point of view, what it's going to take. Is that
Absolutely.
the most critical relationship? Obviously, then when it goes to operations and delivery, depending on how good the pre-construction was and the planning was,
Yeah.
that relationship should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think it varies by project, I guess. I think every project has its own risks, right? I mean, some projects are risky based on cost, some are risky based on timing, some are risky based on, weird phasing or logistics. Like we do a lot of stadium work, right? So those stadiums that are active, right, they have seasons that are coming.
Yeah.
The games are going to be played whether we're done or not, right? So like that's where the risk really lies. So like understanding the build plan with the operations team and the facilities team with the owner and like understanding all that stuff, that's where really the risk really relies, and um convincing the owner that you know how to get that stuff figured out, like that's really like where the pursuits are won, I think. So but it all depends, really. I mean, it completely varies from project to project, I
So
think.
am I right in saying, this is me just speaking kind of off the cuff here? Am I right in saying in a project bidding team, you're in there with a pre-construction manager, maybe a project director, talking, and the client sitting to you going, right, what's the schedule look like? What are we looking at time wise? Turning to the pre-con team and estimating team, right? What's this going to be cost from the beginning? How are we going to get it down to a certain number? Are you in that war room kind of relaxing
Well,
the client's mind on timelines?
I don't know if the scheduler is always necessarily in the room there, but scheduler is always definitely part of putting together like the deliverables that are going to go in there, like that are part of the package and part of the presentation. And again, that does vary. Like down in Florida, like we have a scheduling manager that presents very well, and they like to have him in the presentations, and he does a lot of the he happens to be a very good planner too. Like he just very good at logistics, and it's just um he's very good at that part of it himself. So like he's just involved with that. So he'll go into a lot of the pursuits himself and presents a lot. In other regions, we have general supers that are available to maybe be part of those presentations. So they'll go into it. It all just varies, depends on team to team, what certain clients like to see. It all just depends.
Brilliant. And talk to me now, right? We've got general contractors that have got planning teams like Barton Mallow. How important have you seen the importance of a planning team when it comes to an overall a general contractor and delivering projects? Because there are other general contractors that the pre-construction and estimating team are basically given that responsibility.
Yeah. Well, so I'll just give you like some numbers on um, maybe this will get like our group in 2020. So we had like a a split in 2020 where um, our company kind of split into two separate entities where we became builders with kind of the CM side. So that's kind of where I'll just speak to that side. We were 7 schedulers at that point on the builder side, right? Um, at the end of this year, we're sitting at like 18, right? So we've grown, by 11 in that many years. So I mean, I think that just tells you how much the organization has valued what the work that we've done. They've allowed me to keep hiring, right? I mean, that's an indication.
Testament, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
right. I mean, they wouldn't have let me keep hiring people, I don't think, if they didn't
Exactly.
like the work that we were doing.
Yeah.
But another, and again, there has been some luck. Like I said, I'm not, it's not, not a pat myself on the back too much here,
There's no
but
such thing as luck, Tom. You
there,
made it.
no, but like, so our portfolio of projects has shifted a little bit to bigger projects. We've kind of gotten like more of the mega projects in our portfolio. And it's become clear, or we've been able to make it clear to leadership once the project gets to a certain size, like you need to staff a scheduler on site. Like you just
Yeah.
need at least one person on site. Like you
But
can't
full
be
time.
full
That's the main
time
project they look at.
on site. You can't be doing remote. You can't be doing, 50% in and out. Like, once you're kind of getting above 200 million, or really how we like to look at it more like by pace, right? So it's not necessarily 200 million over 5 years. That's not that bad, right? But
Yeah.
it's the pace, right? So, but we have a number of billion-dollar projects on our books right now. Like you can't do those remotely. It's just
Yeah.
you're getting up to $50 million a month. The change that happens, the amount of work that's being put in place, there's absolutely no way to keep up with that um, remotely and be able to get the amount of change and do the analysis of all the change that's happening remotely. The paperwork and the PCOs and the things that you kind of need to be aware of, it'll get to your desk, but by the time it gets to you, it's too late. Like you're like 3 weeks behind when you actually needed to have it in your schedule to actually do the analysis. So like you just have to be there to like walk the site with the supers. You have to be in the meetings. You have to really be in the trailer to like hear the things that are happening, like not in the meetings. Like I feel like that's really important is just to be there on site. So um the ability to make those hires has really led us to grow our group also. Like, so we have probably four hires in the past, 2 years that are just senior full-time on-site folks, which has been
Brilliant.
a really good help.
Brilliant. Love it. Now, let's go back to Dallas. Obviously, these conferences, I'm a big believer in them. I think it's when the real kind of ideas come to play, when you're speaking with your peers, when you're listening to people talk about pros and cons, successes and failures. It's a real learning time. You shared, as you say, an innovation track. A couple of things came up on it. Give us an idea, mate. I think you mentioned enhanced collaboration being the first one.
Yeah.
Um, what was that all about, and what did you bring out of the conference?
Um, so I will say probably the biggest theme I think throughout the whole conference was there was a lot of discussion on I guess like lean and last planner and I guess just like collaborative planning in general, right? I mean that's I think the like whole planning and last planner and the kind of like buzzwords get thrown around a little bit.
Right,
But
just before and understand lean. What was the other one? Last
sure.
planner.
Last planner, sure. So like Um, really all that's referring to is if you go like at the LCI website, there's a whole like 5-step process of it's basically it's a planning process that involves um typically the traditional way involves like sticky notes up on a wall,
Yeah.
and there's a master planning process to it. There's a phase planning process which gets a little more granular. Then there's a make ready process which gets even a little more granular, which is like 3 to 6 weeks. Then there's a weekly process. So it just keeps going down and down and down into like the daily like work log or daily huddles, I think is the final step. But um honestly, I think all of that is gets a little bit down into the weeds. Mostly what a lot of the discussion was about was just collaborative planning in general, and kind of where the line is between, you know, the scheduler and the general contractor and the contractor, like what's their responsibility on planning, and then like the subcontractor, like where does that line live, and who like is guiding who, because a lot of the last planner, like the idea behind it is the last planner is the person out in the field that really knows the process best, right? So you want to get their input as much as possible. But at the same time, as the CM, like you have contractual obligations, right? You've bought certain durations from subcontractors. You've bought certain milestones. You have certain limitations that you need them to work within. So if you then have a collaborative planning process and the subcontractors are all of a sudden saying, well, it's going to take me 4 weeks longer than whatever that original bid was, well, then like, what do you do then? So like, there was a lot of conversation around things like that. Um, the other thing we talked about a lot was, you know, the critical path schedule in P6, right? That's a very rigid, contractual traditional document. Like every contract in construction will mandate that you have one of those, right? To a certain level of detail. Um, it's a very useful document in contracts and disputes because it clearly delineates who's responsible for what activity. And if somebody is delayed, it shows who delayed who, and you can very easily quantify how many days somebody was delayed and who's at fault. Like you can do the math pretty quickly and easily. Um, the sticky notes up on the wall, the last planner approach, like doesn't allow that type of analysis, right? So like if you bypass the CPM or what like people like to do is they keep the CPM at a super high level, and like then they just fill in all the gaps with a bunch of sticky notes and the last planner. Um, there's a lot of hoping involved in that, right? So it's collaboration. Everybody's collaborating. It's all in good spirits,
A lot of trust. Yeah.
trust, right? And that's great. But again, we are in business, right? There are contracts involved here, and inevitably there can be disputes.
Yeah.
And if you are setting yourselves up in a way where there is no way to resolve those disputes, clearly you might have an issue down the road. So that was a lot of the discussion, which I thought was really good. And I enjoyed that. I spoke actually the year before in Denver. I spoke for about 45 minutes on a different topic, but this was the first time doing like the chair thing where I was kind of doing like the Q&A and walking around and all that. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. So
I love those ones because I tell you why. It always starts quite slow, but then you get into something and then you go down a rabbit hole and you get into the
yeah.
granular stuff on it, and then you start talking about it experiences. I think those are some of the best ones.
Yeah.
But that's good. And then you mentioned a more, I think, develop more actionable analytics. What does that mean, or how did that come up?
Yeah, so this is something that we've worked on in our organization for a while. I think, you know, to traditional, well, I'll just speak from our own experience, right? When I came to Barton Mallow, we had I think every organization has like some like schedule metrics, right? You kind of run all your schedules that you have through some like quality metrics and maybe some performance metrics just to maybe try to spot some risk and get some sort of early indicator of which projects are in trouble. Um, the traditional older metrics would look at like float, negative float, things like that. Quality, right? Missing logic, things like that. Um, a lot of stuff we're looking at now are things like compression, right? Things that will throw a flag before the schedule shows that it's behind.
Yeah.
Right? Because a big risk that we have on our projects, at least, are project teams that don't want to show the schedule behind, right? And they really want to hold on to that date for a variety of reasons, right? You maybe just don't want to show the owner a certain thing, or you really, there's optimism biases involved. Like you really do think that you can, work that extra Saturday, or you really think you can stack those trades, or even the trades themselves think that they're going to be able to work that, whatever it is. Um, there's a lot of optimism bias involved in construction planning. So
And how do you sorry to interrupt, Tom, how do you get
yeah.
rid of that at the beginning? Is it that collaboration approach and the trust and the buildup of trust and the openness and the honesty that we all
Um,
crave for?
I found that you're never going to get rid of it
Yeah.
fully.
Yeah,
That's
no,
why
and I
we,
understand
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean that's why we have these metric, like that's why we have this overarching kind of metric programs to really like, and it's risk management, right? Like, um, you want to be it's kind of a fine line, right? Because you want your team to be aggressive and you want them to really to try to achieve, the best possible outcome, right? You don't want them to just be like give up and be like, oh, well, we're 3 weeks late. Like, oh well,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we don't want that, right? Um, at the same time, if every month we're updating the schedule and we're constantly re-shifting the back end of the plan to hold that end date, like you're building more and more risk into the plan, and we need to be able to measure what, like, quantify that.
Yeah.
So that's like what like compression is. That's really what it's measuring. Um so it's really awareness, right? You'd have to make sure people are aware of it.
Yeah.
um, I don't think you're ever gonna completely get it out of people, but I don't think you would want to either, right? I
No,
don't.
no. Listen. I agree that. I mean, we all think that we're the best at what we do, and subs and trade partners are the same. But I think the more honest. I mean, we were getting a lot in pre-construction and estimating. The more collaborative technology that we see coming through, the less stress and risk involved in
Yeah,
in pricing and all of that. So if we can bring that
yeah.
into everything within construction,
It's
surely it makes
interesting.
everyone's life a bit easier.
I'm curious. And maybe I'll ask some questions back to the interviewer here
Go for it.
because I feel like cost maybe and estimating, um maybe there's a little less nuance to it. I don't know, because like in the situation I'm describing, right? Like you're 25% into a project. Like you have some performance history on certain activities, but you don't know exactly if an activity, 6 months into the future on the seventh floor of the building is going to take 3 weeks, or maybe it'll take 2.5 weeks. Like there's still like a lot of guesswork to it. And maybe cost and estimating is a little bit more rigid, but I don't know. I'm not an estimator. I don't know.
Yeah, from the feedback I get from the best pre-construction estimators, listen, you mentioned their guesswork, but their knowledge of that trade or that experience in that project type and delivery tells a lot. And then you've got historical data. Now, price escalation is impossible to,
Right.
but
Yeah.
that's where collaboration and
Sure.
communication comes in.
Sure.
But we're seeing a
Interesting.
lot with these pre-construction technology tools kind of coming away from Excel. The openness and the honesty and the
Yeah.
permissions to what you can see within the model or the actual program, it's helping a lot. But I agree, you can never foresee everything coming down the
Yeah.
line. It's just
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah. I think so. What we have seen, or what we trust, I guess, at this point is, um, there's certain trends that we can see, like in compression, and there's another metric we use, um, where we'll take the predictive end date, basically take performance on a project to date, use that to extrapolate out a finish date, and then compare that to what the team is saying, right? So if the team says one thing, the performance-based end date says another thing. If those two things are wildly off, right, there's probably something wrong, right? So, um, if you see trends in those two that are just continuously going up, 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 like something's off with the schedule and we just need to reevaluate it, right? I mean, and this is those like kind of higher level macro trends, like that's really what we look at to know that we need to dive into the details, right? We like we don't really see much, you can't really see much metric wise in the details. You see them like the metric stuff at the macro level to know like, okay, we need to actually spend some more time with this team to figure out what's going on because
Yeah.
something with the schedule is not right. It's not the dates that are being predicted by the P6 schedule are probably not feasible.
Yeah.
So like we need to something needs to give one way or another.
Yeah.
So,
Here's a question, actually, Tom, when you're talking about that. So obviously, would the client have some sort of P6 schedule of their own? You would have a P6 schedule. Would the subs or the trade partners, obviously talking about these multi hundreds of billions, even billion dollar projects? I mean, if the electrical contractor is going to be on site for a year and a half or just over a year, would they have their own P6 schedule?
so a lot of the mechanical and electrical trades these days are a lot more sophisticated, so they may be like keeping something themselves on the side, but typically as the CM, like we own the master schedule. So
Yeah,
they're
they give
still
us.
required to push information to us, and contractually we're gonna own that, like the master schedule that we are publishing to the owner and to the trades, like that's like the Bible for the project essentially.
That's their guiding light as
At
well.
least in the CM world on our side. Now, again, on in other contexts, on the industrial side, sometimes where there's the craft labor, like we do have electricians that will work directly in our system sometimes, and so there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, and it's always contract dependent. It's always kind of industry dependent. But typically the CM at risk type world, CM kind of just owns it, and everybody just, they might give us an XCR file, which is like a P6 file, and we might import that in and kind of use that to build our initial plan.
Very good.
Um, but from there, we would do all the updates and maintenance and stuff from there, and they're required to just continuously feed us with progress and
Yeah,
updates.
it's the same as the pre-construction estimate, and the trade partners are getting on so early. They're
Yeah.
giving you costs on and different costs on conceptual, and then the final design and the final DDs. We could talk all day, Tom. I don't want to miss a couple of things. What last question, because we're coming up on time. What is
Yeah.
the biggest challenge right now within project controls in commercial construction or project planning and scheduling? What are you coming up against every day?
Oh man. I mean, I feel like I spent all of 2024 trying to hire people, so I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a good
Everybody's
answer,
the
but
same.
but
It's a
uh,
tough market.
that's probably a boring answer for people. But
No, well, I
yeah,
think it's not. I think it's. I mean, and just from my day job in recruitment of pre-construction estimating professionals, I think it's a relevant one because I don't think people have talked about the I don't want to say the uptake in scheduling and planning within commercial construction. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people overlook it. But let me tell you now, see, even, and I'm not talking about the big boys, the ENR top 150, 200 people.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the young, innovative companies that are only
Yeah.
doing 60, 70, $80 million project. They're
Yeah.
putting a serious amount of emphasis on pre-construction services. And part of that pre-construction services project planning and schedule.
Well, so I told this story at the advancing conference actually because we had multiple um electricians and trade partners giving presentations on scheduling, right? So
Right.
that was actually unique and interesting, and I thought that was fantastic. But that just kind of shows you where the discipline is like expanding out, like, and this was, maybe 2 years ago. Again, I'm in trying to hire, and we have these big projects, and we're trying to find people that can go out and be the lead person on $1 billion project, which is not it's just it's a small group of folks out there that can do that. Um, and I'm just kind of looking at some of the other postings out there to see like who I'm competing against. And all of a sudden I see like McClure, which is mechanical trade, and I see MC Dean, which is another electrical trade, for hiring senior schedulers, and I'm just like, now I have to compete against like our trade partners too for scheduling of like talent. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just to your point, like it's not just the ENR like top 500, it's not just the oil and gas folks, it's it's and we didn't even talk about this before, but I work for a small MB consulting firm
Yeah.
on the owner side, which again I would recommend that for anybody that has an opportunity to work on the owner side for a little bit. Do it. It's a great opportunity just to kind of see what that is like and get that perspective. But even before that, I had like a little 6 month stint where I worked for a company called NGS, which was a little government IT firm that needed planning and scheduling consulting help. This is what I needed to move back from Texas because my wife was pregnant and we needed to move back, and I just needed a job like really quickly while I was looking for other jobs. And lo and behold, they were doing government contracts and they needed to do like submit schedules for whatever they do. But it was an IT company, so like they needed scheduling help. So like the job is out there. It's aerospace, IT, healthcare, like it's all over the place. So
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, and I think that's the message. And this is what the Pre-Construction Podcast is all about. These degrees, the education system isn't set up to produce schedulers, planners, pre-construction estimating. So this is to get the word out, and anybody that's in an APM job, assistant super, or even just in the trades, and you're thinking construction's not for me. There's loads of other opportunities and other skill sets that might suit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, for when we are hiring, just at Barton Mallow, we do look for construction first. Like if you have that base construction knowledge first, we can teach the scheduling part and the P6 part. Like that part is easier to bolt on than the other way around. Like if you got the base construction part, you learn that part first. Um, and it's a lot of like I said, the six hires over the past 2 years, um, two of them were operations people,
Yeah.
former operations folks from internal, conversions. So, we do that a lot also. So,
Well, we're seeing that in pre-construction estimating as well. The real
yeah.
smart operations guys are coming in and they're fixing problems at the very beginning rather than when they get to the field. Tom, this has been amazing. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
fun.
And listen, if there is anybody listening now and they're interested in hearing more about scheduling, they've got maybe a follow-up question on what we've
Sure.
talked about, where's the best place to get you?
Um, Geez. You can just message me on LinkedIn, find me there. That's probably the best place. So,
Yeah, there you are, folks. What I'll do in the show notes below, I will put a link to Tom's page on LinkedIn. Connect with him, look at his stuff on LinkedIn, and shoot him over a message. Tom, you're a legend. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for shifting over to get some scheduling content on there. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You're going to be the first of many. We're going to get as many schedulers as possible.
I'm glad to be the first. It's an honor.